desert. It's too damn hot there for me, and it's too damn hot in here for me. I wore a coat, long sleeve shirt, so I could be presentable. You might not like my speech, but you might like to look at me without my coat. And my name is George Ciampa. I'm Italian. We have 2 volumes in our voices, loud and louder. So you might know I come here and the damn mic isn't working, right? You hear what I said? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Y'all have hearing aids?
Oh, yeah.
I don't. And they're at home in a drawer. And I got them from the VA. I got one pair, and I couldn't find them. So I went back and got another pair. And they said, hey, these are like $6,500. We'll give you another pair, but that's it. So I took that pair home, and I found the other pair. So now I got 2 pair.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was with the 607th Graves Registration Company, 124 enlisted men and officers. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, the officers didn't do a damn thing. The rest of us did all the work. And, you know, I tried to get in the Air Corps when I was 18. I graduated from high school the same day I was 17. I worked for Douglas Aircraft on SBD dive bombers, Navy dive bombers. And I thought, geez, it wouldn't be great to fly with these, because I used to sit. We'd take them out on the tarmac, and I'd do all the finishing touches in the cockpit, including the piss tubes. You know what that is? You guys in the Air Force? Anyway, my brother was in the Air Corps, and my brother-in-law, and I thought, I look at them with their tipped hats, and they walk with a swagger, and all the girls are looking at them. I thought, that's what I want to do. So I tried to sign up. My eyes were 20/22, and so I flunked it. The doctor said, eat a lot of carrots and come back and try it again. I did. Didn't work. So I flunked it again, so then I got drafted. And I had to go to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and right next to us was an air base. You guys know about that air base, Fort Warren? Anyway, the Air Force, the Army Air Force, was hurting for pilots. And this was in March of '44, 3 months before the invasion. And so I thought, I heard that they had lowered the eye requirements. And actually they did. They lowered the eye requirements to 2030, no glasses. Nobody knows that except me. Excuse me. But they did lower the eye requirements, and so they accepted me. And then they notified my company commander, and you know what hit the fan? And so he transferred me out of the company I was in, which was the 610th Graves Registration, a bunch of young guys, and I was a replacement for another Graves Registration, the 607th. The guys were all older than I was. I was the youngest guy in that outfit, and I think they're all dead now. I was 18. On the way overseas, the guys are all kidding me. Don't worry, Ciampa, they're going to turn the ship around and take you home. Roosevelt said no 18-year-old will set foot on foreign soil. Anybody know that? Well, it's the truth. And so I had a cousin in the Navy killed when he was 17. You know, in the Navy, they take you when you're 17. I think the Marines does. By the way, in the Army, they told me I had 20/20 vision. Anyway, can you hear me? So, on the ship, we landed at Liverpool, England, and they broke our company up into 4 platoons and a headquarters platoon. And so I was in the 4th platoon. And like I said, I was the youngest of the bunch. So they broke us up to send us to different cities in England. And my platoon went to Bristol, and where we could see all the bomb craters around in Bristol from the bombing they were getting from the Germans. Anyway, we were there for a while, and then they sent us to St. Austell, which is in Land's End near the ports, Falmouth and Portsmouth. And before they sent us there, however, they gave us some bad news. Anybody here know about Exercise Tiger? Anybody know? You know. One person. 2?
That's the one where they had the land.
Yeah, I'd advise you to get the book out of the library. and you'll see in the index at the back is a 607 Graves Registration Company. We had the Army, Navy, whatever, the expeditionary forces had an exercise called Exercise Tiger. It was right off the coast of England, Slapton Sands, it's called. There were 4 LSTs out there on a practice landing on the shores there of Slapton Sand. Of the 4 LSTs, 3 of them were sunk, torpedoed by a German torpedo boat. And we lost 18 guys, 6 survivors. The 6 survivors, ironically, were all privates. But we lost the lieutenant, the first sergeant, we lost all the officers. And so when we got that news, it scared the hell out of us. We said, no dry run, this is a war. So we were billeted in private houses in England just for sleeping accommodations, not for food, but the British people there where we stayed gave us black market eggs, mom and pop knee bone, who I kept in touch with after the war until they died. But that's another story. Anyway, we left from Falmouth, and this was in the daytime, and while I was on the ship, I met a Navy sailor who was a gunner. He was my age, a little bit older. But anyway, I got acquainted with him, and he showed me their quarters. When I looked at their quarters, I thought I should have been in the Navy. Anyway, during the night, we were down in the hold of the ship sleeping, and all of a sudden, a huge explosion. And we all scampered up on deck to see what the heck was going on. It's in the middle of the night. Anyway, we found out what happened. This Navy gunner that I had met, he shot this torpedo plane down with a torpedo aimed at our ship. That's what the big explosion was. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here now. Richard Blake from Cincinnati, Ohio. Anyway, next thing happened is we hit a mine cable. It was no big deal. By the way, I had a Mae West on and a life belt, both, because I couldn't swim. I wasn't taking any chances. Not that swimming would do you a damn bit of good. You just drown slower. That's all. So anyway, first thing you know, we're approaching all these ships. Nobody knows really how many were out there. The LA Times said 4,000. I used to work for the LA Times, and I did a plaque that shows the first page of the LA Times on June 6, 1944, and it says 4,000 ships. Then later on, here's 5,000 ships. Anyway, there were a lot of ships out there, and so we're one of them. We're actually anchored broadside. There's the shore. We're broadside over here, and the Germans are shooting at all these ships with the 88s. We call them screaming memes because you hear them scream going over you. And so all of us scampered on the opposite side of a ship, the shore, against the bulkhead. Everybody knows what a bulkhead is, right? So we're standing against the bulkhead to get some protection because they're hitting ships. So we're looking at a tanker blowing up and debris in the water, bodies in the water, and we're waiting for our turn to get off the ship. I have no idea how long it was. It seemed like hours, I'm sure it was. But I'd go down a rope ladder, skinny me. I weighed between 112 and 115 pounds. The guys used to say, "Hey, Ciampa, turn sideways and we can't see you." Like that. You know what I mean? So anyway, I go down that rope ladder and get in a LCI. That's the smaller landing craft called Higgins boats. And I got in that thing, and there was a Jeep in there, and I sat in the Jeep. And we started to go in. We could hear the 88s screaming over us, and we thought they were zeroed in on us. And they turned around and went back out, and then turned around and went back out. The third time we go in, and I find out much, much later the reason for doing that is they're looking for a place to land where there's no obstacles in the water. Okay? So anyway, we finally get there, and we can't go all the way in, And like I said, I couldn't swim, not that do you any good. Had all this gear on, and so I'm wading in the water up to about here, I guess. You know what? I can't remember a lot of that landing. I blanked out. I've done a story called my masterpiece called Silent Dog Tags. You know why they're silent? The guys are dead, right? Because that's our job, to pick up the dead. So I did, and when I was 24 years old, I wrote that, typewritten. Now it's on my computer, and now it's getting revised again to put in a book format. Well, I'll have a book. It'll be about a 50-page book, and that tells all about my service, what I experienced. And so anyway, my wife, when she read that, she said, "Oh, gee, don't even think about it. You might bring back bad memories." Well, I never got PTSD, is that what they call it? And people wonder why I didn't get it, because we handled bodies every day in France and Belgium, except one day, 11 months, picking up the dead, Americans and Germans. We handled about 75,000 dead Americans and Germans. We buried the Germans in a separate cemetery, temporary. These are temporary cemeteries where you put the guys in mattress covers and put them in the dirt. And we had service troops doing that in Normandy. A couple of days later, we had German prisoners doing that. And after that, we had German prisoners doing that throughout France, Belgium, and Germany. But you know what? It was a very hard job for me. And I'll tell you why it was especially hard for me. Because when I was 5 years old in Boston, Massachusetts, an Italian family, my mother and father came from Italy and met here, got married, had 10 kids. I'm the ninth of 10, and the 10th, my sister, just died last week, and she was a year and a half younger than I am, and she was in Oklahoma. I haven't seen her for a few years, but anyway, at a funeral of my little cousin Teresa, who was 8 years old, I'm standing at the grave site with my mother. My mother, who had lost her voice before that event, it came back to her. And as they were lowering the casket in the grave before us, so that's what they did, my mother screamed, "Teresa!" And I can see that. I can look over there right now and see the grave and my mother here screaming, "Teresa." And so that gave me a big fear of death for a long time. And so then they put me in a Graves registration. I got to handle bodies. Now, what do you think that was like? I mean, I broke down about 2 weeks after in Normandy, and the lieutenant pulled out his .45, stuck it in my ribs, and said, "You get your ass back out there, suck it up." You know, in World War II, they didn't baby you. Who are World War II guys here? World War II guys, anywhere near combat? You know, our job was not to shoot the Germans. We carried carbine rifles, which are pretty good for about 100 yards, not more than that. But our job was to bury the dead. We worked with the combat medics that you don't hear enough about. We were at collection points where they were watching guys die, and some of the guys saying, "Well, that guy's dying, you can take him." And so the Germans didn't pick up their dead, we did, and they put them in a temporary cemetery across the road from our cemeteries. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You might know they don't have a damn mic when I come here. Scott, what the hell are you doing to me? Okay, anyway, I'm just kidding. But you know, I escaped the desert to go to Torrance for the summer. I'm sweating here. Look at you guys. Nobody's hot except me. So anyway, okay, and my coat's over there. My phone is getting charged over there. I had a hell of a time finding this place. They rerouted me over. I put down 2850, and they kept going to 850. And I kept telling them, no, 2850, 4 or 5 times. They keep sending me all over the damn place. So, you know, I'm worn out before I get here. Now, what you know, I don't have a prepared speech. I've been interviewed a lot, and not bragging, but especially doing my 6th film which was my last documentary. I've been doing documentaries since 2006. When I was 81, I turned filmmaker, and I just retired from that, but I still have work to do. But anyway, the sixth film was in Normandy on June 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th of 2019. The timing was just right to do this. I wouldn't have been able to do it in 2020 or even 2021. But I did that film, and I took other D-Day veterans. It turned out that I had 10 D-Day veterans in Normandy, all interviewed, including myself, as to their D-Day experience. American Airlines sent us first class. American Airlines has helped me through 4 of my 6 films. Unbelievable what they've done for me. Anyway, by the way, I brought a few of those. I only brought 10, sold one. I sell them on my website, and I'll give you my website, but you don't want to buy it there because it's $20 plus $5 shipping plus California sales tax. If you buy anything for me, it's $15, period. Okay, get over that. That's the commercial. Okay, now, going back to the film, where the hell was I? Now, like I say, I never prepare anything because I never know what the hell I'm going to say, and I've talked to thousands of kids in high schools, not only here, but in France and Belgium, and they really welcome you over there. They just love to have a GI come back and talk to them. Unbelievable. And but anyway, let me finish where I was. The cemeteries, those 17 temporary cemeteries, not all of them, but what they did after the war, 2 years after the war, in 1947, they built permanent cemeteries. Beautiful. Have any of you seen a cemetery over there? How many? Okay, beautiful, right? White marble, crosses, marble imported from Italy, crosses and stars of David. And guess what's on the tombstones? Guess what information? I'll give you a part of the information. The soldier's name, the unit he was in, the state that he came from. What else? What else? Huh?
Rank and date of death.
Yeah. Rank and what outfit it was in. There's no date of birth. No date of birth. Only the date of death, which is approximated a lot, as I know. And I call the ABMC, that's the American Battle Monuments Commission, who built the cemeteries. The cemeteries are all beautiful. In my opinion, better than anything here. Now, after the war, next of kin had a prerogative of having the remains sent home in a lined casket. Of course, it's just bones at that point, 2 years after the war is over. A lot of them buried before that, or another year or two. But anyway, all remained over there in the cemetery. So when you see emails showing American cemeteries, the number of guys there in those cemeteries, that only represents 40% of what was there. The other 60% were sent home. Got it? So when you're looking at a cemetery over there like Normandy, 10,000 graves, you've got to add another 60% to that. So when I get these emails, I write back and say, thank you, I know what you're doing here, but you got to understand, you're only looking at 40% of what was killed. So anyway, I've visited every permanent cemetery since the war. Only one of the 2 in Italy, but I've been to all of them in France, 2 in Belgium, 1 in Holland, 1 in Luxembourg. I've seen all of them. I've been over there many times because I've been doing my films over there. I did 2 films in France, I did 2 films in Belgium, I did 1 in Germany. The film I did in Germany is about the German kids during the war. I interviewed people who were kids during the war, who are now between 76 and 86, to talk about their war experience and to talk about their experience with American GI, how we gave them love, food, and attention. And it's a very emotional film. We got subtitles where people are talking German. A couple of those Germans live here now, and they speak in English. Anyway, so that's why I'm seeing all these cemeteries, because I go over there and do these films. I don't do the cinematography. but I do everything else. And it's, I'll tell you what, I worked day and night for 14 years on these films for no profit, zero profit. And if I wanted to get profit, I couldn't anyway, because I had a hard enough time just raising the funds, working my ass off, get money from people, $10, $20, $50, $100, $1,000, $10,000 to do these films. And so there was no money for me, and I went into it to do one film. And I got so many emails from people telling me to continue doing what I'm doing, because my mission is to educate young people in particular about the high price of freedom. I know people like me in Graves Registration or combat medics. We know the high price of freedom because we saw it. I had a look in the eyes of soldiers my age who were even the German soldiers with a cross on them like this, or a St. Christopher's medal for those of you who are Catholic. And I'm Catholic, and I had a look at that. I had a look at bodies in all shapes and forms. Imagine looking at a tanker who was coming out of his tank on fire, and now there's just a big ball of charcoal there. Can you imagine that for an 18-year-old kid that's still wet behind the ears to have to witness all that? And then people say, did you have PTSD? My sister said I had nightmares. I don't remember a nightmare. What I do remember is going to sleep at night. Sometimes I think about it, especially in my older years. I think about all these young kids that didn't even have a girlfriend who gave their life for this country. And I'm sorry, look at the shit that's going on in this country right now. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. These guys and gals, because we buried women also, gave their lives for this country, and what it was like for them when they were growing up, what it was like for me when I was a kid and a teenager, what it was like for me. I had a great life, and I got married, and my late wife passed away when my kids were 10 and 11, the boy 10 and the girl 11. She got lymphoma, lived with it for 5 years when they were 4 and 5, and they told her she's going to live for 6 months. How do you think I felt? And she felt. And so we went through that. And then when the kids were 10 and 11 and their mother dies, think about that. You know what I say? If you live long enough, you're going to have at least one cross to bear, okay? And the kids had the first cross when their mother died. They're living in Colorado now. My daughter has an autistic daughter, 12 years old. She had an MBA. I put both of my kids through private colleges with my money. I didn't get a dime from anybody. I had to pay for everything myself. Notre Dame for my son, and University of San Diego for my daughter, and put them through college, and did all that. So I'm more proud of putting my kids through college, raising them, boy, girl. Imagine me, you know, I was not as old as I am now, but I wasn't a young guy, and I had a young girl, 11 years old. You ladies know what I'm talking about. And so, anyway, getting back to the war, I met a lot of great people in Europe. We have great friends in France, Belgium, and the Netherlands. By the way, let me tell you about the cemetery in the Netherlands. 8,300 guys buried there. Every grave is adopted. You know what that means? People put flowers on those graves from time to time. They don't do anything maintenance-wise with the grave. The ABMC does that, and they do a great job of it. But there's one cemetery over there, Henri Chapelle, where I know a lot about it because we had 17,300 guys buried there during the Battle of the Bulge. And that cemetery, the permanent, that was 17,300 in the dirt, in the farm there. And then when the war was over, they built another permanent cemetery about 200 yards away. And there's a 9,000 there now from the 17,300. The others went home. But the native people are the ones who had to disinter those graves and put them in caskets after the war. And a lot of those caskets were sitting on the ground with tops over them because of the weather until they could get the cemetery built and the next of kin saying whether they wanted the remains sent home or not. So I'm involved I wasn't involved in any of the disinterring, but we did disinter a grave in Germany because we went through, by the way, in France, the stench at Normandy got in your clothing, your shoes. You slept in a foxhole that way. Or if not in a foxhole, right next to the foxhole. And then in the Battle of Belgium, coldest winter in 30 years, it was freezing. And the prisoners digging the graves had to use jackhammers to get through the ice and dig a grave. Anyway, look, nobody wanted to be in graves registration. I mean, guys that would come around looking for their buddies, especially in Normandy, the paratroopers, you know, nobody wanted to be in graves registration. I didn't want to be in graves registration for damn sure, but I had to do it for 11 months, every day. One day off in Paris. It was like the end of the war. It was a big standstill in the war when we were in Paris. And then after that, zoom over to Belgium. Belgium is raining like hell, and then we finally get to St. Mary, to that mental block. We finally get to the cemetery that we initiated in Belgium, 7 miles from the German border. And it was raining, and it was snowing, and so that was freezing weather. And so none of it was easy for that whole 11 months. I don't know how I made it, but you know, fortitude, and you just press on. And so anybody got questions? No, keep going here. I had 35 minutes. When did I start?
5 minutes ago.
Did I use up the 35 minutes, Scott? Okay, a few questions.
Yes, sir. It's not a question, but it's a comment. When I first read the title of your presentation about the high importance of the high cost of freedom, and then I saw graves registration, and I knew being a combat medic, I knew exactly what you meant.
And you guys did not get enough credit for what you did. I know.
No, they didn't. And also, I was a retired psychiatrist, and we didn't even have PSTD back in World War II. It was shell shock, or what is it?
Combat fatigue.
Combat fatigue,
Yeah.
or something like that.
Yeah.
And also, because of the fact that we went through, like you say, we went through seeing so much death and so much of this high cost of freedom.
Where did you serve?
In Vietnam.
Oh, okay, thank you. You guys had it tough, but we didn't have any ladies and kids shooting at us.
Exactly.
You know, and we didn't have to go through jungle. We didn't go through jungles.
That in the war, we'd say, thank God we didn't have to worry about anything up above us like you did.
I'm 96 years old.
After 2006, correct?
I love to tell people that when I'm on the phone with them trying to get something. You know, you're talking to a 96-year-old guy here. Be patient with me. Damn it. You know, you try to figure out something with your computer or whatever the heck. Hey, I don't want to fall off of that damn thing. Yeah. No, I can stand up. Yeah.
What did you do with the 2 dog tags, and what's the purpose of the notch on the dog tag?
That was when they dyed it. You know what I mean by that? Die cast. They didn't put it between the teeth or anything like that, no. One dog tag stayed on the body, and one went on the wood marker that we used. Later on, another graves registration came in, put wooden crosses, so you had a dog tag on a wood cross. And then later on, of course, the marble. And those of you who've seen the marble, I mean, I'm telling you, these cemeteries are fantastic. If I had died over there, I would like to have stayed there, but my mother, knowing my mother, my Italian mother, she would have me brought back home to a cemetery that she chose at no cost. Anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. I'm almost reluctant to ask this because I think it may be...
A little bit louder.
I say I have a question. I'm a little reluctant to ask it because I'm not sure if it's naive. How is it that some of our veterans came home and some were buried there?
Oh, I think I told you that. After the war, 1947, 2 years later, the next of kin had the prerogative of having the bodies, the remains, returned in a casket lined the caskets, by the way, but they didn't open them, of course, because they're just bones, or left over there. Got it? They can have the remains sent home in a casket.
Initially, they were all buried here.
Initially, they were all buried in the dirt, in mattress covers. And the mattress covers get, deteriorated. And in Germany, Germany, the last cemetery we had there, a couple hundred miles from Berlin, Eisenach, when the war ended on May 8th, then we had Memorial Day services at the cemeteries. And at that one cemetery where we ended up, that had to be disinterred and all those bodies put in boxes and sent to Belgium and Holland. And we had German prisoners doing that work. But we identify the remains as pretty gross. I don't talk about this to kids in schools, but anyway, pretty bad. And a stench with, this is in May, so you got stench going with it. And it's I don't know if any of you have a loved one. I don't like to get into that because it was very gross. And they had to be sent back to temporary cemeteries.
When you go back, and you've been back to Normandy and Belgium, what is the reception from the European?
Okay. You hear about how the Europeans don't like us. Well, I didn't find one that doesn't like us. I mean, look, as I just said, we were back. I was in Normandy about 5 times. The first time I went back was 50 years later. 40 years later, I could have gone when Reagan was the president. I was not interested in going back. And then 50, what was it? When the hell was it? When Clinton was president, I went back. And then when Obama was president, I went back. And Trump. Trump was there, and he did a very good job. And he's in my film, part of what he said, as is the French president. But getting back to your question, in Normandy, they treat us like rock stars. They have been doing this every 5 years. The first generation, I still know a few people there from the first generation, but they taught their kids well. The second generation, they're like in their 60s, and their kids, the third generation, I mean, these kids come out with their parents, and they're waving at us and throwing kisses at us and coming up to us and want to take a picture with us. If you take a picture with a couple, first thing you know, there's 50 people around, and they want your autograph. And I had cards made up for my guys that I took over there. And by the way, one of the guys I took over was the first time two of the guys, they're 2 Navy guys. They had never been there before since the war. One was a corpsman, and the other one was a signal man on a ship. They're a little bit younger than I am because they were 17 when they, so right now they're like 95 going on 96. But I took a ranger, maybe you know his name. His name is David Wren, R-A-A-E-N, Korea to Vietnam, Major General. He was a ranger captain on D-Day, and I interviewed him. I had American Airlines send him and his physician because he's had heart failure. He's like, right now he's 99, but he was 97 when I took him over there. But anyway, he travels with his physician, and I got both of them sent by American Airlines from Florida, first class. The rest of us went from Dallas, and they took my guys from Ohio, Pennsylvania, wherever they lived, from there, first class to Dallas, a big dinner and a big send-off, and so then from Dallas to Paris. In Paris, I had a bus, 50-passenger bus. It was a really nice bus that I paid for out of the funds I raised. I thought I was going to have to dig into my own funds to do this film, and I was committed to these veterans and American Airlines and to myself. And my wife always told me, why don't you do a film about yourself? Why are you doing that with all these? I said, no, I have to have all these. I want veterans, Air Force, medics, combat engineers, one from each of the services, even the Ranger. I had a hard time finding a Ranger. They're dead, you know. And so, anyway, he was a Major General in Korea and Vietnam, and he lives in Florida now. He's written a book called Intact, if you want to get it. Anyway.
A couple more questions.
Okay, I'm sorry, go too long in answering a question.
Right here.
Yeah, you.
George, why don't they put the date of birth on the,
Why didn't they? Well, I was so upset when I was there with my.
repeat your question, please.
I'll answer that for you.
Repeat the question, they can't hear.
Yeah, can I answer his question?
Why they didn't put the date of birth?
Okay, I'm going to answer that. Okay, what happened when I went over there and I saw there was no date of birth? I was with my fiancée because I got married again 10 years after my wife died in 81. I met another lady in 91 and we got married in 94. Anyway, she and my kids talked me into going. I had a freebie trip. And so when I walked through the cemetery alone for a while, looking at graves and thinking about maybe I helped bury that one, I walked back to them and I said, look, you know there's no date of birth on these crosses, the Stars of David, only the date of death. And I was so upset, I called ABMC when I got home. Why didn't you put the date of birth? They blamed it on World War I, Pershing. That's the way they wanted it then. They didn't want any date of birth. And I think it's the worst thing they could have done, because when you walk through these cemeteries and you have no idea how old these guys were, and you know there are people over there, young people, that have websites, that have researched who that soldier was. In Holland, they got pictures of these guys at the crosses. Holland is fantastic. They get about 300 visitors a day of Dutch people. And you know, most of them speak English over there. But anyway, that's what they pass the buck.
First one is, did they do anything before you went to start identifying the bodies to prepare you for that at all? Did they, or they just said, here, go ahead and start looking at dead bodies?
Yeah, we went through a regular infantry basic training in Cheyenne, and then they sent us to Denver to a hospital to watch an autopsy. And I'm at the back of the room, you know, and watching these coroners sawing a skull open. And so it was right before lunchtime. And that's the only thing they had us look at, a dead body autopsy. That's it. That's it.
And then two more. One is, where was your first detail? You might have said I missed it. Where was the
Normandy.
Normandy was the first time.
Oh yeah, D-Day. D-Day.
Okay, you got. And then the next one is, out of the people you identified, how many would you say you were not able to identify?
Well,
like one every 100 or one every 50 or one every...
Well, it's hard to say. It depended on which temporaries, or not even the temporary cemetery. We had not much of an idea of that, but then after the war, when they built the permanent cemeteries, then they had the records, and maybe 400 and some at this cemetery, you know, 300 and some at that cemetery. So it varied cemetery by cemetery where they were.
And did Germans have identifications on them or no? Did they have dog tags? The German soldiers?
No, they didn't have. They did have identification, but not like our dog tags. And there's 14-year-old kids buried there. See, they didn't take their dead back. And if you go to France, you can see a German cemetery there in Normandy, and they got grotesque monuments like 4 in a square, and they're dark brown, and you can read the date of birth. 14-year-old kids in some of those graves. 14-year-olds. You know, and you know, with us there were some 16. There were guys. We all know, I think, that there were a lot of guys that volunteered that were 16. Some of those guys were killed.
Time for one more question.
Okay, you tell me who that guy's back, way in the back there. I'll get you.
Sense of confirmation.
I can't hear you.
It did not change with the war. In Vietnam, I had to go down to Graves Registration in Long Bed a couple of times to retrieve personal effects, and I never found anybody in Graves Registration that wanted to work there.
Yeah, no, no, I didn't want to work there. And you can imagine when I had a big fear of death as a little kid, and I had to go through that. Anyway, give us one other guy here. What is it?
Hey, George, you mentioned that the Germans did nothing to recover their own dead bodies.
No, we did.
You did. Was there any effort on our part to get the information from the Germans
You know,
to the Germans?
hey, look, oh, you know what? I was a private. I didn't know anything about that. Anyway, thank you all for listening. And one more commercial. Back there in my bag, I think I had 9 DVDs from this. See it right there? That's me standing on the beach at Normandy. You can see that's 2 years ago, 2019, and that's about an hour and a half film. And I'll tell you what, if you buy it and you don't like it, send it back. I'll give you your money back. Everybody, I hate to brag, but I've got a lot of awards for. That's, you know, I got a lot of gratification for doing this, as hard as it was. Yeah. I mean, I got to, oh man.
You deserve it.
I got to meet so many people, and you know, heartwarming to talk to a lot of these people who had members of their family killed or still living. And anyway, thank you. See, that wasn't so bad. Can you all hear me, huh? Like I said,
You're spilling your water.
like I said, I didn't pee there. That's okay. Clean up.